property prices are slowing down. What's next for 2025 and what are the 2025 property trends that you need to know? Is Singapore property showing signs of moderation and is the Singapore property market actually cooling down? If today you're an upgraded investor or you're a first-timer looking at the property market, is there a window of opportunity and what should you be doing today? Hello everyone, I'm Ted and today I'll be sharing with you about the property trend in Singapore and what is the price going to be like in the whole 2025. So without further ado, let's get started. So recently you might have seen this article in April 2025. It actually states that the private home prices actually flattened and they're inching up at a mere 0.6% for Q1 after the year-end jump. And next, you also see a HDB resale price rising at a slower rate of 1.5% in the Q1. So both HDB and the private property are actually increasing at a slower rate. What does it mean for property in Singapore in the whole entire 2025? And is it going to slow down or are we going to recession? And also we have different articles from the Straits Times which states that both the public, which is the HDB, and private property, they're also showing different signs of moderation. And this could be due to the increasing supply in the housing market for both sides. And that's why the price is actually growing slower in the 2025. So today I'll explain the different articles and what it meant for you and also the different burning questions that you might have as a buyer or seller today. And if you are a buyer or seller today, what should you be doing? Is this a window of opportunity because the price is starting to moderate and it's actually growing slowly over this whole entire Q1? Is this trend going to continue in the whole entire 2025? So in the first article, it actually stated that the residential prices for the private property is growing even more slowly in the first quarter of 2025 at 0.6% as compared to the previous months and the end of year last year. And as compared to the sales volume, in fact, the sales volume have already fell 15% as compared to the previous quarter. Why is it so and why did it lead to the lower volume in terms of the transaction and the slower price growth in terms of the private resale market? The reasons are actually written here. So right now, the overall market condition have already softened because the buyers, they're actually becoming more price sensitive and there's a wide range of products in terms of the new launch of private condos that are coming to the different buyers. They have more selection and more demanding power. And also, there's more global and economic and local uncertainties and that's why it might also result in a new launch developers driving at a more competitive pricing strategies, and that's why overall the prices are growing much more slowly in this quarter itself in 2025. In the next part of the article, he also explained that growing at a slower rate of 0.6% is actually much more reasonable because in the past it used to grow at 2.3% and growing at 2.3% every single quarter is actually not sustainable in the middle to long term, which means 2.3% times 4 quarters in 1 year it might grow more than 8% or even 10% a year. That's why it's very unsustainable for the property to grow so fast in Singapore itself, and therefore it's time for the property prices to start moderating. So this is actually the private housing price index for Singapore, and you can see that over the years since COVID 2019, the price have already grown steadily increasing and right now it's starting to moderate because it's unsustainable for it to continue to grow at 2.3% every single quarter. Another reason for slower growing price could be the increase in supply because in the Facebook, the Minister Desmond Lee actually said that the government will continue to have a strong supply in the private housing market, and in the GLS for the first half of 2025, there's a total of 5,000 houses that will actually be supplied to the developers itself. And this is already more than 60% higher than the previous years. So they are really ramping up the supply. With the increased supply and the stagnant demand, it might lead to the lower prices or slower price growth in the whole entire 2025. They also explain that another possibility is due to the increase in new launches in only the CCR area. And for CCR, it actually means Core Central Region, which is around the Orchard Newton area or like the City Hall, Marina Bay area. So in CCR areas, because the price might be higher and this means that there will be a higher quantum and that's why it might not generate the same kind of volume and interest from the mass market buyers, which is the Singaporeans and also the PRs. However, with the increased supply, the expected demand for the new home sales will remain at 7,000 to 8,000 units every single year as compared to the previous years of 6,400 units. This means that there will be an active demand for the Singapore market for the new launches in Singapore. The total demand will be around 7,000 to 8,000 and the first half supply will be around 5,000. So usually the demand have to meet the supply. If the supply is less than the demand, then the price will have to go higher. So right now the supply is increasing, and that's why the price is starting to moderate. However, the increase in the property price might be less positive than before due to the economic uncertainty. So for example, for Singapore's GDP, previously we were expecting 3 to 6% growth, but right now it's around 3 to 4% or to 3.9% for the GDP, gross domestic product of Singapore. So likelihood in the whole entire 2025, the growth in terms of the property price will not be as fast as before. So the previous article is for the moderation of prices for private property, and this is the article for HDB. In HDB, we also see a moderation in prices, and right now the prices are growing more slowly at 1.5% as compared to 2.6% in the quarter 4 of 2024. So we are seeing the early signs of moderation in terms of the price and also the volume for both the private and also the public housing in Singapore. And also for the HDB, they have already ramped up the supply. So in terms of the supply in the HDB, for the February sales of balance exercise, there was more than 5,500 HDBs that are available. This means that there are shorter waiting time, and some buyers might consider the sales of balance, which a shorter waiting time as compared to a HDB that is resale. And the volume have already dropped 7.7% this quarter, and this is likely because of the increase in supply of the new BTOs and also increase in supply of the sales of balance that are available, which reduce the volume of transactions for the resale HDB. One thing to know is that there are still many $1 million HDB flats that are transacting in the entire Singapore, and in fact we do see more demands in the matured area nowadays. So some of the matured areas with the higher $1 million flat is actually the Toa Payoh area, followed by the Bukit Merah area of 50, and then the Queenstown areas. And these are the mature areas with more transactions for the $1 million HDB because they are much more convenient to the buyers themselves, and that's why we might continue to see more $1 million transactions because of the convenience in the mature areas. And in July this year 2025, HDB will continue to have more BTOs of 5,400, and you'll also continue to release 3,000 sales of balance in July this year. And combining both together, in terms of the sales of balance, there will be a total of 8,500 sales of balance, which will be the largest number of sales of balance flat with a shorter waiting time since 2017. So these will really ramp up the supply in the whole entire HDB area, and ultimately it will lead to lesser volume of the resale transactions because the resale buyers for the HDB, they have now moved on to the BTO, or they have now moved on to the balance sales units, and you will expect more moderation in terms of the HDB resale prices because of this ramped up in supply. So overall, because of this sales of balance, they are absorbing the resale market demand. Ultimately, the price will go at a slower rate of 3 to 8% for the entire 2025, and right now it's around 1.5% in Q1. So we can expect to see Q2, Q3, Q4 a total of 3 to 8% the entire of 2025. You can start to estimate or guess what will be the remaining growth rate of HDB prices in the upcoming quarters. This is definitely in line with what the government want and what Minister Desmond Lee said. Because of the increased supply, it will start to moderate the property market because they also understand the Singapore pain point of the property prices rising too fast, and that's why the government have actively ramped up the supply for both the HDB and also the private property, and we will continue to see a moderation in the upcoming 2025. So if I were to put into pictures, these are the two property price index. So for the first property price index is actually HDB resale prices, and next is the private property, residential property. So in the past 2023 to 2024, we see an upward trend, and right now the Q1 have actually dropped to 1.5 for the HDB and dropped to 0.6 for the private property. So the price are actually starting to moderate as you have seen over here, and likelihood this will continue to be the trend to be stagnant or continue to drop in the whole entire 2025, and this could be opportunity for you to either exit or change into the right property at the moment. So with the statistics showing clearly that the prices are dropping down, you might have some burning questions. And what can you do right now? Because the property is starting to show signs of moderation, the volume is dropping, the percentage growth as compared to quarter 4 of 2024 or the whole entire 2024 is also starting to drop. What will happen to you and also your property asset, and what should you be doing now? So right now, answer the burning questions that you might have, and if you have any burning questions that is not listed here, feel free to drop me a text on my number on the top or in my YouTube channels or Facebook, Instagram handles over here, and I'll answer your questions afterwards when I actually have time to say it. So there are 5 questions here, and the first question is, what does this slower price growth in both the private and HDB market mean for me itself? So in the past few years, from 2019 all the way to now, the price have been growing steadily, and right now the price are starting to stabilize. So when the market is starting to find balance, this means that buyers, if you are a buyer today, you have actually much more space to make decisions, much more time to actually negotiate and find the right property itself. And for sellers, you might need to start readjusting your expectations because the property price may not be as high as before. So whether you are buying or selling today, you need to adjust and look at the overall fundamentals of the whole entire Singapore property instead of looking at a short-term trend. Ultimately, you want to focus on the long run, what is going to happen to your property, and make a decision from there. So the second question is, should I sell my property before the price continue to dip, or should I continue to hold the property? So whether you should sell or hold the property actually depends on your timeline and your reasons why are you planning to do so. So if you are looking to upgrade or restructure your property, then right now might be window of opportunity, because when you're buying, the sellers are actually more cautious. There's a chance of you getting a good buy, and for sellers, this is actually one of the peak before the prices continue to stay stagnant. So ultimately, it depends on the reasons why you are planning to do so and what are your actions. So who should actually consider whether they should continue to sell or hold? If you actually stayed in your property for more than 5 years, or you're holding a property for more than 5 years, it's time for you to relook at your property portfolio and decide what should you be doing next. Third question is, will this affect the new launch property price, or is it just for the resale market property prices? At the moment, I do see that these trends are affecting more for the resale market and less of the new launches market. This is because for the resale market, buyers have more selection of choices, and they also have more bargaining power. But for the new launches, because the developers have bought the land at a higher price, they do have a certain cost of business in terms of construction and also their land bid price. That's why they will not be able to adjust their prices as flexible as the resale market sellers, and that's why the prices for the new launch may not be dropping anytime soon, but the resale prices, you do see the drop in prices from the seller's perspective. However, for the future new launches, you can expect that the developers will be very cautious and they might price it very right because they are also worried about the current situation. For example, if you're a resale seller, you only have 1 unit to sell. But for a developer today, you have maybe 500 units to sell for the entire 5 years. Who will be more stressed? Definitely the developer. So in the future, the developers will be more cautious when they're bidding into the land and when they're selling the new launch in the future. The fourth question is it a good time for you to enter the market before the price increase again? Yes, it's actually a good time for you to enter the market because right now as the buyer's market, you have the time and you also have the choices and different flexibility to negotiate the seller in terms of the prices. Just be clear of the decisions that you're making. Make sure you buy into the right price, the location, in terms of the floor plan and also the value. The main thing is that you must make a decision instead of not making a decision and waiting forever. You can never catch the lowest because you don't know how to time the market. So just make sure you get into the market at a reasonable price, and it's always a good time to enter the market. It's an opportunity for you right now if you're a buyer looking to enter the market at the moment. Last but not least, why are the prices only moderating now after years of rapid growth? Firstly, we do have cooling measures over the years, but cooling measures, they do not work immediately, they work over time. And right now, it could be the effect of cooling measures, and we are starting to see how these cooling measures are healthy to create a sustainable market in Singapore. And secondly, apart from the cooling measures that the government have, they're also starting to have more supplies. As you can see in the article earlier, they have more supplies for either the BTO, the sales of balance flat, and also the government land sales, and that's why with more supplies, the prices are starting to moderate. And lastly, there's a lot of economic uncertainties right now. So because of this uncertainty, some buyers might be taking second thought, and that's why the prices are starting to moderate. However, if you understand about the fundamentals of economics, the fundamentals of the price of property and why it's actually happening as a trend of 2025, this will help you to make a right decision. So before you make the right decision whether you should buy to today's market, regardless of the economic uncertainties or the current cooling measures effects right now when the price is actually moderating and stabilizing, I always recommend these 5 golden principles of property investment. Number 1 is to start saving and investing as early as you can, because if you start earlier, you can actually compound the returns and property price increment over the years even more as time passes by. So you should always start as early as you can. Number 2, always increase your net worth assets in terms of your property price value. If you're holding a property today, think about how you can double your property value or increase further by 1.5 times. How are you going to increase using the current cash or the loan that you have and maximize property as much as you can with this entire trend right now? Number 3, invest based on the numbers, not emotion. Understand the economics, the price, the history based on the data that have already transacted. If there's a price that makes sense, for example, the resale is same price as a new launch, maybe you want to consider consider a new launch and really understand the numbers and not buy based on emotions over here. Number 4, think about your future and also the future price in terms of Singapore, and are there any future MRT, any upcoming developments. So buy for your future, not just because of right now present is very comfortable and I do not want to over leverage. But right now when people are having fear in the market, it's time for you to make a decision, because when the market is fearful, that's when you can actually maximize the amount of return. So buy for your future instead of currently. And last but not least, very important is that you must have 18 months of emergency fund, because we will not know what will happen to us in the next 18 months. Having this buffer will make you feel safer, that if anything happens, at least you have something to fall back to. You don't need to fire sale your property, and you can actually continue to do what you like and love for your job, because you're not stressed by just property itself. So you must have 18 months of emergency fund. So these are the 5 golden principles that you must have before you consider to buy a property in today's market. So without further ado, let me introduce you what you should do for the buyers and sellers looking to take action today. So for buyers, it's very lucky for you because the price is actually stabilizing and the market is starting to moderate itself, increasing at a slower pace of rate. You actually have more options, whether is it resale, new launch or sub-sale, and you actually have the room to negotiate with the sellers because there's a lot of different choices in today's option. So that's something good for the buyers. And also on top of that, what you need to do now is to really shortlist all the quality properties, because you have too many options. You need to determine in terms of the location, layout and amenities, so that if you're exiting in the future, you can actually exit safely. It's very important to exit safely in the market, because you do not want to buy and not make money at the end of the day, or even lose money at the end of the day. So if you're in the market, do watch out for motivated sellers. It's probably a chance for you to get a good buy, and there's a possibility for a window opportunity to get a very good buy. So this is a time, if you have been waiting for 1 year, 2 years or 3 years, this is really a good time, a window of opportunity for you to buy at a good price and negotiate, get something that is worth for investment. Do not wait anymore. It's a time for you to buy before you are actually priced out of the market. So for sellers, because the prices are already moderating, it's time for you to reassess your current pricing strategy from the current market data. Look at what are the different transactions in the nearby development and also your current development, and understand how you should price your unit so that you can actually sell faster and move on to your next purchase, because it's time for you to have a good buy. So you sell earlier, you can actually have a good buy instead of holding on to the property, because this is currently one of the peak. And when you are selling your unit, it's important to engage the right agent to help you to actually emphasize on the key strength of your own unit, so that the buyer can make a better choice when purchasing your property, and be open to negotiating when the timing is right, when you have a good offer. And last but not least, have the right positioning in terms of property upgrading or selling, because the market is already stabilizing. You need to relook at what you are actually currently doing. So the market right now is uncertain, and some of the buyers and sellers are very fearful. So it's really a good time for you to take a look at what's going on in the market, and is there any window for you to make use of this opportunity. Maybe it's time for you to reassess what you should donate, because the market is actually emotional right now and the prices are actually starting to stabilize. Singapore is still a safe haven, and regardless of what's happening to Singapore's market, the Singapore dollar is actually going to stabilize according to a UOB report. I do have a UOB report that I sent to my clients lately, full 2025 UOB report in terms of the recent tariffs for the US and how it actually affect the whole entire world. If you want to have the UOB report and also read how it actually affect you, feel free to drop me a text on my number here, or also at my social medias over here on the top left, and I'll actually share with you more. Remember to like, share and subscribe. As I mentioned, it really helps me a lot to have more motivation to create a better video and content for you and give you the most updated news about the market. So thank you so much. Remember to help me like, share and subscribe. Thank you. Bye bye.